So speaking of unintended consequences, I didn't intend for that segue, but it's beautiful for where I want to go. And I want to establish the fact that you have spent your adult life defending this country, and presumably in your mind, you're doing it to make America a safer place to live, to protect our citizens. But I have this theory that I want to put in front of you, that every time a politician says, I have policy X, and it's to make you safe, you should run for the hills because it's going to do the opposite.
It's probably a good idea. I was in a debate recently with my previous opponent, and I said, I hear people on the left, and I take them at their word, and really politicians in general, it's not just on the left, but politicians in general, talk about I care, I care, I care, I care. And I believe them. But more and more when I look at their policies, what I actually see is I want to control, I want to control, I want to control, I want to control.
Yeah.
And there's a certain element of that where it's overbearing and quite frankly obnoxious.
Yeah.
I wanted the country I believed I'm fighting for was a free one where people get to make their own decisions. But no, another perfect example, and again, unfortunately, we're going to have to segue back to Iraq here for a second. When we first went over to Iraq, we were actually disarming the population. 4 years later, we were arming them because guess what? We couldn't be in every village. We couldn't protect every area. And it's the same concept. Over here in the United States, every time a politician says we need a new regulation or we need this new tax because it's going to fund this program that's going to take care of you or it's going to protect you, and you see the same thing with gun control policy is trust us with a little bit more. We just need a little bit more of your freedom, a little bit more of your money, and we'll protect you. Don't worry. And I'm sorry, but I don't see that playing out in society very well. As I look across space and time, as I look across history, I see more and more when populations, when free people give up more of their power to be able to live their own lives, to include to be able to defend themselves under the hope or promise or guise that the government's going to do it for them. I don't see them being safer. I don't see them being more prosperous. I see them becoming more dependent and later on down the road really regretting it.
Yeah. Well, let's dig into gun control because I think this is a difficult one for those of us that believe in the Second Amendment because we always run headlong into arguments about safety.
Yeah.
And they tend to be emotional arguments. And every time there's a horrific shooting, particularly at schools and people have this emotional response, we have to stop this. And the only way I can think to stop it is to ban this gun or impose more restrictions on the ability of people to acquire guns legally. And logically and empirically, these solutions don't make any sense at all. And yet, emotionally, apparently, they're quite compelling.
Well, and I think you hit it. So one of the things I used to teach economics and government to students, and one of the things I used to emphasize to them is emotion is not a bad thing. When you have a visceral emotional response to something, whether it be good or bad, that's an invitation to thought. So the moment you allow the emotion to direct your action, that's where you start to get into problems. And that's the part where I start to question, is your true intention to understand this problem and to come up with a solution that will actually work? Or is your true intention to make yourself feel better about whatever the problem is and your response to it? And you see this all the time with kind of the virtue signaling and whatnot, like, oh, I need to be the first one on Twitter to respond to this.
Yeah.
I don't need to see any other facts. I don't need to see other evidence. In fact, evidence and facts at this point, like how can you be talking about, cold hard facts when we demand action? Like, well, wait a second. I want to fix the problem. I'm assuming you also want to fix the problem based off of the emotional reaction you've had to it. But what that requires is that now that we have to actually do the hard work of understanding the nature of the problem, the circumstances surrounding it, how to best address it. And if it's just, this will make me feel better, well, then I'm going to start to assume that you're not a compassionate person, you're lazy.
Yeah.
And you just want to do what makes you feel better instead of what actually makes people safer.